Welcome to Voice Is, a podcast where we have conversations with people whose voices we love to delve into the good, the bad, and the messy of what makes your voice yours. I'm Julie Fogh.
And I'm Erin Clark. We're co-founders of Vital Voice Training, a voice, public speaking, and communication coaching company out to change the conversation about what your voice is supposed to sound like. Oh my goodness. We are so excited to see our friends here today who are going to come in and watch us live. And we can't wait for those of you who are going to watch this afterwards. We understand if you don't necessarily want to hang out on LinkedIn on a summer Friday, but we're hanging out here today. And we are very, very excited to talk to you a little bit about what we've learned this spring, observing a lot of different companies and a lot of different people as we've been traveling all over the place in the US doing corporate workshops. So we're so excited to be here with you today. My name is Erin Clark. I'm in Manhattan.
And I'm Julie Fogh. That H is silent, and it's quite appropriate because I'm in San Francisco. Pardon some street cleaning noise happening out there.
Of course.
So we have had an incredibly busy first quarter of this year doing a lot of corporate training. So a little bit about us, if you don't know us, we're Vital Voice Training. We are a bi-coastal partnership that is very, very passionate about communication, the underpinnings of what makes us connect, how we connect, and how we can bring more of our full selves to the table in a world of broken systems. So we've been doing this since 2014. Had some time during the pandemic to really get down and dirty with a lot of ideas, and then got to go out and play in the real world with them. So it didn't really matter what industry or where we were. There was a lot of overlapping themes. So that's what we wanted to talk to you about today. What we saw, what we learned, and some possible solutions from our version of solutions, which is they're not tips and tricks. They're very, very context dependent and very gets us thinking about communication being in the pit rather than like outside watching it.
Yes. So a little housekeeping. We welcome your questions. We welcome your comments. As far as we know, there's a little bit of a delay between what we see on StreamYard and what you will see on LinkedIn. So we will do our best to keep up. But please, if you have questions while we're talking, we want to see them. And we're going to kind of go through this with three of these main questions and answers / perspective shifts that we want to bring to you today. So Julie, am I missing anything else in our intro, or should we leap into that first question?
I think let's leap into the first question. And like I said, just because we're talking doesn't mean you can't ask your questions. Please include yourself in the conversation.
Yes. So the first, as we were thinking about and kind of coalescing all of these learnings that we had from going to all of these different companies this spring, one of the things that kept coming up over and over and over again was basically, how do I make my meetings less painful? Because we all know that meetings are kind of soul-sucking sometimes. And I think nothing is more distressing than having to run a meeting and looking out at the people who are either with you live or with you on Zoom and seeing that everyone seems to not really want to be there, or you suspect that they don't want to be there. There's a lot of awkwardness inherent in meetings, right, Julie?
Yes, especially in this world right now where we're doing sometimes virtual, sometimes in person, and sometimes hybrid.
Mm-hmm. And making that adjustment sometimes very much on the fly, which we'll talk about in just a second. So the answer to the question, how do I make my meetings less painful, for us, all comes down to an actor tool that we want to introduce you today, which is the actor tool of given circumstances. Investigate and design your given circumstances. So what are given circumstances? Given circumstances are the who, what, where, when, and why of your scene. And so much of what we noticed is that people are having meetings because they're supposed to have a meeting, or because it's always been this way in this company. We always have a meeting on X day where everybody shows up, or we know we need to do weekly updates, so we'll have a weekly update meeting. But while they have kind of a general idea of what's going on, they haven't really been digging deep on the rest of those given circumstances, the who, what, when, where, and why. So getting clear on the what, like what are we doing here, is very important. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in just a minute. But getting clear on all of the rest of the stuff is really important too. And we had to practice what we preached as we prepared these workshops, because we were doing a lot more day-long intensive and multi-day intensives with people. And we had this sneaking suspicion that things were going to feel very different when we got back in person. And we were correct, right, Julie?
I mean, you all know that you can't put your finger on it. It's just somehow you're a little bit more tired, or a little bit more unsure of yourself, or why am I more nervous than usual? All of these things are a part of this return to innocence. I don't
Oh my gosh. So we nicknamed this topic, Everybody Needs a Nap After Lunch, because one of the things that we noticed with our day-long workshops that we were doing was this profound energy dip at different parts of the day. And the energy really did kind of ebb and flow. This is just kind of one example of thinking about given circumstances, thinking about how much time you have to accomplish a task, thinking about how people's energy tends to ebb and flow. Like, what do we kind of know about humans? We kind of know that we get cranky when we're hungry, and we kind of know that we get sleepy then a little bit maybe after we eat. These are things that we can actually take into consideration.
It's funny because I think about given circumstances, and I just wrote a little note to myself, this idea that we can optimize by forcing our way through, or we can optimize by adapting. And I think that's what we're talking about. But what are we adapting to in these given circumstances? So yeah, it's what do we have? What's our push off point? Where are we now? That is much more helpful than where do I wish we were? We always say.
Well, and that takes us into this idea of curiosity, not judgment, right?
Yes. Because the other thing is, as we mentioned, when we're on Zoom, and we've seen this across the board and we felt this ourselves, it's very, very difficult to read a room. And this is a lot of reasons. We don't share the same atmosphere. Like, we literally are not sharing the same given circumstances. That's one thing. But also, just in general, working from home pushed boundaries and transitions really tightly together. And we were kind of operating as though, and this is kind of what I was saying about optimizing through force, you ended up getting people at times that weren't good for their physiology. You ended up getting people at times where they had to close a door and ignore a family meltdown happening outside. There's a lot of other variables. And I say all of that because the first response people have when they look out of a room of blank faces is to blame themselves. I'm not enough. I'm boring. It's my fault.
Yeah.
It is not. And if you can approach what you're seeing or what you think you're interpreting with the curiosity of the moment, what could this mean? Instead of, I know what this means and I'm already adapting. We have this brain function that takes all incoming information and sort of runs it past our history in order to decide if things are a threat or not. And that's where we form our stories. This is the area that you can really implement curiosity. And curiosity, I believe, it's an expansive word. It allows you to participate. It allows you to discover what things are instead of telling things what they are.
Yeah.
So it's an important mind shift. This also leads me to another thing that we can do in meetings, which is intentionality in designing these circumstances. So as Casey said, when we were designing our presentations, of course we know there's an after lunch dip. We experience the after lunch dip. Yep. Okay, so great. What do we do? Well, let's put something physical there. Great, that's a good solution. This can be the same thing. There's so many options. If you know that this is at a time for energy dips, you could change the time. You could figure out some more proactive ways to include people. There's a lot of facilitation that can happen ahead of time,
Yes.
which what I think in general we saw people not taking advantage of. Parameters of meetings, agendas for meetings,
Mm-hmm.
goals in meetings. All of this stuff can really help you both keep things tight and not take too much time,
Mm-hmm.
and allows us to, because we don't share the same given circumstances when we're virtual, and sometimes when we're feeling really awkward, not even in person, allows you to establish rules that everyone can see and don't have to intuit.
Yes. Because we all know what it feels like to be in that meeting, that like the stated purpose of the meeting is one thing, but we all know that the real reason for this meeting is something else. And a lot of awkwardness can come from that. There is, I mean, you're talking about curiosity, not judgment, as an in the moment practice of, when you're with these people and you don't know how things are landing, or you don't know how people are reacting to you, not judging them. There's then the intentionality of setting the container in advance and communicating that with the stakeholders. And so you can be in that curiosity mindset there too. What do I think my people need to perform well? If I'm concerned that XYZ team member is not contributing as much as I want them to contribute, as opposed to perhaps putting all of the responsibility on them to jump in and contribute, like, what can you do to make that meeting work better for your introverted people, for your international people who might have different cultural standards of how they communicate? We get curious about the people, about the who, so that we can get clear on the what, so that we can set containers for the where and the how and the when. And if you don't know the answer, ask people. Like, this is such a great opportunity to get buy-in from your team when designing meetings that work better for everybody.
One thing we noticed, everyone is aware that no one likes a bunch of meetings. This is, and everyone wants to be respectful of other people's time.
This meeting could have been an email. We've all seen that meme, right?
So with that core value, rather than responding to what does it mean to respect people's time, which again, agenda setting and making goals clear and making the end, when we have talked about this can be the end, always to be respectful of people's time. We found people doing very often one of two things: speeding up what they were saying in order to be respectful, which doesn't help us be understood in any way. And it also sort of signals, I don't think I'm worth your time.
Yeah.
Or not speaking up at all, because that saves time too.
Yeah.
And those aren't alternatives that I think are in anyone's best interest in the long term, or even the function of the meeting to start with. So these are all ways that we can, again, address the problem directly as it is, without doing these little like adaptations we do, like, oh, there's a rule here, I'm going to try and switch but not let anyone know that I'm switching. It's crafty sort of.
So just to sum this up, basically we are making our meetings less painful by actually intentionally thinking about them, by thinking about the given circumstances, the who, what, when, where, and why of our scene, by doing that prep work ahead of time to set the container so that people know what this is about, know what they're supposed to be doing here, and then staying curious with those given circumstances in the moment. And we're going to get back to some more specific ways to do that at the end, but really setting that container of the given circumstances for yourself, whether you're in charge of the meeting or not, you can do this kind of work. And it will, I promise, make the experience less painful.
Yes.
So Julie, you want to introduce question number 2?
This one, I think a lot of you will relate to. And that is, I have a big presentation coming up. How do I blow them away, or be good, or fascinate them? You choose your word in there, but some version of how do I blow them away?
Because of course, the reason why people bring us in is because they want to be better communicators. They want to be, and more specifically, better public speakers, right? Me in front of a crowd. And this is something, of course, that we love to talk about, because one of the biggest myths out there that's holding people back from being an effective public speaker is this very nebulous idea of what good public speaking looks and sounds like. And so, what we see so much of the time as people try to imitate good public speaking is this very general energy. Like, I'm just going to do more or be louder or use more arm gestures or say more words, because that's going to help convince them that I know what I'm talking about. This like the solution being just add energy or just imitate some nebulous idea that we have in our head of like what it means to be a good communicator. And that doesn't work. It doesn't work at all, right? So we've got a different way of going about that. Get specific. This sounds so basic, probably maybe in the similar way that like, oh, just think about the who, what, when, where, why of your meeting sounds basic. But people aren't doing it. Like they're
Right.
again, there's just this sort of generality that we saw of energy. And so much of it was tied to wanting to be good. Our brains really, I mean, this is part of this curiosity versus judgment mindset thing. When we go into judgment and we judge either the people that we're talking to, or we start to judge ourselves and how we're doing, it creates this closed feedback loop that just takes us away from the audience. And again, sometimes we shellac general energy over that, and it's just not, it doesn't land.
It reminds me so much of bad theater. So when you go into some, usually it's a summer stock version, and I have great respect for people out there doing the work. So let me retract the word bad and just say kind of theater
under rehearsed, perhaps.
Well, I'm thinking more of audience participation. Where someone's out there and they're the crowd warmer upper, and you get just a lot of like clapping in your face. Everyone, I want to hear you say yeah. And it feels sort of like someone trying to imitate the WeWork dude whose name I can't remember, nor do I care. But it's like generalized, let's get out of your seats. And I think it comes from sometimes we don't want people to see that we're a little bit lower energy, but it also comes from this idea of control. I'm going to control my audience by just throwing more energy at them. Or it makes you feel more in control with all of the energy. But the problem is, again, it's not specific.
No.
It's not even about your audience. It's about generating a vague idea of something that you're then demonstrating. And that's not human behavior.
No.
Versus you can get specific about what you want that interaction with the audience to be. You're never going to have control over the audience, but you can, I want them to feel this way. Okay, great. Well, when we want someone to feel something, we don't go in and hammer them over the head like, I want you to love me, or maybe you do, but it doesn't work. So finding what's the tool that works. What's the tool that can help me galvanize? What's the tool where I am showing up and doing the thing and not feeling like I'm receding so far that my only alternative is to generate some proximate, that's the word, proximate of energy.
Yeah.
And I want, Casey, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, what do we see when either there's kind of too much unfocused energy, or the alternative being, I feel that just adding energy is not working, and I'm starting to really judge myself, so I start to sort of shut down. There's like the forward and the retreat. The forward, I feel like, looks like a lot of unconnected movement, unconnected pacing, shifty feet, sometimes I call it, hand stuff. Like if you've got like almost like a tick in your hand, like you squeeze your hand or something. All of these are signs that the energy doesn't know where to go. So it has to escape somehow. And it's either going to escape physically or it's going to escape in word vomit territory. And then sort of the opposite end of that, when the energy starts to shut down. Julie, do you want to describe what we see when we've got energy shut down?
Oh, yeah, I mean, and I'm sure you all have seen this before, that the person that stands up there and you freeze.
Yeah.
The disengagement, and it can, I mean, freeze doesn't always look like someone standing stock still and unable to move.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes freeze looks like that.
Yeah.
It can look like spacing out. It can look like disconnectedness. It can look like not noticing if you've skipped over a bunch of words because all you're trying to do is get through it.
Mm-hmm. So what we're doing is we're giving that energy somewhere to go, because our brains, especially when our nervous systems are heightened, desperately crave an action to take. Like they need something to do, because if we don't give our brain something to do, we're going to start evaluating how we're doing. And that's when we get in that closed feedback loop that, like, I'm 3 inches behind my eyeballs. I have disappeared from the room. So the two questions, and they're right there on the screen for you. What's my role? What's my goal? What is my objective? This is another actor term for you, but we've sort of broken it down into role and goal. We've been having a lot of fun lately with our private clients, our one-on-one clients, talking about, like, what are the roles that they play in their workplace, in meetings, as, you know, as part of their job function. What is the role that I'm playing? And then what are the actions underneath that role that help me to accomplish that? So one of the ones that's been coming up a lot is the detective. Like, my job is to be the detective. I need to find out things. I need to ask questions. I need to investigate. And all of those actions have their own energy that then we can bring to the stage that gives that energy somewhere to go that is more specific. We talk about tour guiding and hosting a lot, right?
Those are these wonderful terms. Detective has been also something that we've been having a lot of fun with. I've been thinking lately about the professor as well.
Yeah.
The host and the tour guide, when we stand up in front of a room of people, I'm going to talk about host for a second. It can be easy to feel like it's us versus them. Like we have encroached on, I won't say enemy territory, I will say other people's territory. What hosting does is allows you to put yourself back into the driver's seat of a situation or a setting without having to wrest control from everyone or everything. The role of host can center you, and depending on who you are, hosting might come very, very naturally to you. If I say, "Oh, can you host this for me?" versus "Can you facilitate this for me?" that might have already a different kind of connection. And really, facilitation is hosting.
Yeah.
So taking it to, how am I taking care of people in this room? How am I directing them towards what I want them to see? How am I the person who has taken charge of the larger picture? Works really well with hosting. I come from a hospitality background, so that one makes a lot of sense to me. When you're a server, you're not abdicating the responsibility. Like, yes, I am there to assist the people that are in my section, but I am not there to be subservient. I am there to create a relationship in which somebody else feels taken care of. And it's an art. But a lot of people have a lot more instinct in that than they may realize. And conversely, sort of connected with the idea of the professor, is this idea of being a tour guide through your own ideas. We often find people, when they're preparing, will prepare their own knowledge. I want to make sure I know what I'm talking about, versus I'm going to prepare this so I can communicate it to another person so they know what I'm talking about. And that's a different thing. The tour guide means that you are responsible for showing people the significance, the relevant ideas. You're responsible for leading them through the connections between ideas. You're responsible for bringing them on this journey to show them exactly what you want them to see. Where I think that this one immediately sets some folks' little alarm bells off is that takes away saying everything that you know and answering every question before it's been asked as a tactic. Now, I'm here to tell you that's the best thing that will ever happen to you, because that I'm going to show you everything I know. That's not expertise. That's a book report. And especially for all of these folks that we work with, their job is to communicate very complex information in order for folks that are making decisions to understand the relevance of what it is they work on so that the goals and all the moving pieces can move forward. There is more attention rather than thinking about, am I good? Am I explaining these ideas in a way that clarifies them? Am I leaving them with what I need them to know to make an informed decision? These are some questions that you can start to ask yourself in this realm of specificity. Again, with these ideas of hosting or tour guide or detective or whatnot that are not about handing someone everything you have. Enjoy.
Yes. If you're somebody who worries about concision, and that is definitely a concern that we hear all the time, this is the way to concision. This is the way to curating your information for your audience, thinking through your given circumstances, using that information about your given circumstances to come up with your objective, your role, and your goal, and get crystal clear on that. Then you kind of have to curate what you bring to the table, because that's how you accomplish the goal that you've set for yourself. So getting clear on that goal beyond, I want to be good, or I want them to like me, or I want them to take me seriously. This is absolutely game changing, because again, then we can concentrate on what we're doing, not how we're doing. Because once we get into that how we're doing loop, it's like game over, basically. It's so hard to get back out of that. We can, but concentrating on the what and getting really specific so that you've got that kernel, you've got that goal, you've got that direction is absolutely game changing.
So yes, you're welcome. Okay. So let's talk about question 3, because this one came up a lot, and I have to be honest, every time we hear it, it breaks our hearts a little bit. It is so not how we think about things. So we really wanted to address it, and that is the question of too muchness and the question of. So people have told me I'm too much, but my last evaluation said I need to speak up more. Or I'm on a multicultural team and I'm so afraid of being rude that I don't want to express any point of view at all. These all, they connect together. And that's what we want to talk about.
Yeah, I think there's such a, because again, back to what we said at the beginning, there is a lot of awkwardness out there right now. There's a lot of we're sort of relearning how to be together. We are relearning how to share an atmosphere in a room. A lot of us are in new positions. We talk to a lot of people for whom they're in a new job. They're on a new team. They've either leveled up within their organization or they've gone to a completely different place. And that moment of figuring out does trigger so much stuff. And our clients are so brilliant and so high achieving and so awesome, and have this great tendency to also be very, very self-critical, very much focused on their faults and their flaws. So it's an easy thing to do, I think, to just get into that headspace of taking a piece of negative feedback and making that, now that's all that people think of me, making these assumptions, or of shutting yourself down before you even try something because you're so worried about awkwardness, or you're worried about it landing wrong, and you're worried about the implications. We do that, that death spiral of assumptions about, I'm gonna speak up in this meeting and people are gonna think I'm an idiot, and then I'm gonna lose my job, and then I'm gonna be it. That's how dramatic it gets in our brains.
It really does. And I am passionate about awkwardness because I have, this is my territory. I understand awkwardness on a very, very deep level. And we often talk about this fantastic book by writer Melissa Dahl called Cringeworthy: The Science of Awkwardness. And it's something that I recommend to anyone who experiences that, because when it comes down to it, awkwardness is having a version of yourself reflected back to you from another person that is unfamiliar. And so
Mm.
all of those mirror neurons that are used to kind of figuring out how you're supposed to act or what to do next get confused, which sort of leaves, well, what do I do now?
Mhm.
And if you're a person like me that actually does instinctively evaluate a situation before I speak up, it's how my nervous system works. It is what it is. If I'm not recognizing that there is no answer right now, that no one knows how to be a mirror right now because they're so used to looking at themselves on Zoom that even a face that's not their own is giving, wait, but that isn't the same reaction I was having. So many reasons can really look at awkwardness as just an experience, just a
Mhm.
moment, something that passes and something that every single human being on the planet is experiencing. And
Mm.
we included this question about being rude in there because these weren't individuals that were rude or even had the potential to be rude. And in fact, when pressed, couldn't even tell us what might be rude. It was awkwardness that they were avoiding. So that's also, I think, a question to ask yourself in that. I would also say in noticing consistent awkwardness, maybe there's more clarification in those given circumstances that needs to happen. Maybe there's more
Yeah.
clarification on that role or that goal, but none of them mean you suck.
Well, because like, let's be clear, sometimes things are awkward, and that actually does mean we need to change our strategy or we need to do something a little differently. We're not saying that like you are perfect just as you are in all circumstances. That's not a possibility. Like, that's not a possibility for human beings. We are absolutely going to make mistakes. We are going to have things that we try land like lead balloons in the room, and we're going to have to try something else. The point of embracing awkwardness, especially right now, especially as we relearn how to be together, is because we have, I think, a really unique opportunity right now for major cultural shifts, for setting new containers, for acknowledging difference and diversity, whether that's race or gender or age or experience or thinking style or ability, anything. We have this opportunity to, instead of kind of forcing everybody to homogenize into one style of being at work, to instead embrace this beautiful friction that happens that, as our friend Pierre Gilardi says, friction creates sparks. Like, this is what makes ideas better. This is what makes workplaces work better, is when we can acknowledge awkwardness, absolutely apologize for wrongdoing, apologize for the effect of what you might have said on another person. We're not saying like it's okay to like say whatever you want. Like, we have to acknowledge consequences. We have to acknowledge how things land. But we have the opportunity here to bring more styles to the table, even if they clash a little bit, by acknowledging that awkwardness is just par for the course. It's just par for the course when a bunch of human beings try to do a thing together. It's just, it's what we live with. It's what so embracing it.
And this is where we also get into your twos, because what you were saying, we need more diversity in all ways at the table. So I have a little secret for everyone watching. You are interesting. Fundamentally, you are interesting. You think about things in a way no one else thinks about things. You have interests and a combination of interests that no one else has. Really wish that siren weren't going off during my inspiration talk right now. It is what it is. Okay, it's going the other way. So what we saw so much is this fear of being too much keeps people from going into where they're interesting that might be a little different from somebody else.
Yeah.
And also at the same time believe themselves to be utterly uninteresting. That no one would, on some fundamental level, no one really wants to listen to them. So when we come in, we're not like parents that love you no matter what you do. I mean, it's not our role. So when we say every single person that we finally got to show us a little bit of who they are charmed us beyond belief, you
Mhm.
can trust that that comes from a place of expertise, not like every baby's beautiful.
That is so true. This was so consistent across companies, across genders, across industries, across race and role, and like everybody. When we got to see a little bit of the people that we were working with, we were just like, tell me more. Like, I mean, because I mean, I think we're really, really lucky that we get to work with incredibly cool people. I'm sure eventually we'll run into somebody that we work with that we're like, do we really want to see any more of you? No, I don't think we do. But truly,
Really?
like, such genuinely interesting ways of thinking, and um, passions and interests, and points of view on the world. When they show that, we just we were immediately enraptured. And that ability to show that, I mean, this goes back to our authenticity research. This goes back into our executive presence research. We have to create, it's not all on the individual. So as much as we want to say individuals, oh my goodness, please step into more of who you are at work. But the workplace has to meet you. The workplace has to set that container to make that happen. The major finding of our work on authenticity was we have to shift our idea of bring your whole self to work, or authenticity at work, from this individual pursuit to a community practice. We as a community make it so that people can show up with more of themselves intact. And who makes the difference here? It's the leaders, it's the team leaders.
Yeah.
They are the ones who, by their own example, first of all, of stepping into their twos and embracing awkwardness, can set that example for the team. But also by creating that psychological safety, creating a system for accountability for harm, creating a system for embracing conflict and figuring out how we can have that be healthy. You are the ones who set the culture on your team, and you have the ability to bring forward more of the people who work with and for you in a way that's so powerful and so game changing.
I think, and what you bring up, we saw in our research, and then we absolutely saw it happen in practice. I wanted to add one more thing about when we see the other, the you-ness of you, the individual underneath the performance. It isn't just us that are charmed. We watched colleagues see each other in a new light and recognize talents they didn't know in each other, and talents that were needed in the kinds of conversations they were having in order to solve work problems. So it feels very much like a win-win to start to create these cultures,
Mm.
not just because it's the right thing to do, but because your work gets better.
Yeah. So, how do we find our twos, and how do we deal with people telling us that we are to something? I feel like this is a crucial piece for the individual. Too much is one that we hear a lot, but of course there's too loud, too quiet, too aggressive, too soft, too cold, too emotional, too, I don't know. There's so many double binds. This is part of the origin story of Vital Voice training, is acknowledging, particularly for women and people of color and LGBTQ folks, and anyone who falls outside of the mythic norm. Our twos tend to be more visible because we are considered to be outside the norm. So what's the what how do we evaluate it when we get that feedback that we're two?
Well, I think the first question is, to whom? To whom are we too much for? This is, Casey created a really beautiful feedback matrix that presents the question, who? We found in our conversations with folks that sometimes it was an old boss. Sometimes it
Mhm.
was a partner of the past. Sometimes it wasn't even relevant to the moment, but this guard over showing that particular part of their personality had been in place for so long that they assumed that it was something really horrible and needed to be contained.
Or that it was a universal opinion that because one person thought that everybody thinks that about
Yes.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to whom is where I start.
Yeah. Well, and then we go again back to these fundamental questions of like, what are my given circumstances and what am I trying to do here? What is my role? What is my goal? Like, sometimes some parts of us don't belong in a particular set of given circumstances, or they aren't as effective. So we let those parts of us take a back seat in a strategic way. But often those things that we spend so much energy trying to hide because someone at some point gave us the feedback that it was too whatever, holds so much power and so much energy and so much of that you-ness of you, that allowing a little light to poke through the cracks in a strategic way and just like making those like little experiments of just daring to show a little bit more of that and see how it lands. And that can be something that has some strategy and some fun to it, as opposed to, oh God, I have to like lock this down.
The other part of, I think, this too muchness is the vagueness
Oh,
of feedback. Because very often somebody's told they're to something, and rarely are they given concrete examples. And if they are given concrete examples, they are not given concrete models of what would look different. And so
mhm.
what we're left with is the strong belief that you're to this means this part of you is inconvenient for me. And I would like that not to be the case anymore.
Yeah.
Versus objectively, that is bad. And
Mhm.
sometimes it comes with a, a benevolent frosting on it. I'm just
Yeah.
doing this to help you out. I'm just doing this to let you know what people are saying.
Oh,
But it's not actionable feedback.
yeah.
It's We also oftentimes mention that disproportionately women are given this kind of feedback. Rarely are men given, but we've worked with men that have been given you're too much, and it's always because they're outside of some model of masculinity or what bro confidence looks like. We have to look at where these things are coming from, and we have to decide at this point, as the point that we're becoming leaders, at the point that we're making community culture decisions, at the point that we are now in positions of power. I think we get to look back and do the same thing for ourselves that we would do
Yeah.
for the people that we want to take care of. Like, go ahead and Marie Kondo out some of that feedback I got when I was 22 probably shouldn't be still in my head at now times no age.
So, and again, this is all toward the goal of increasing our ability to be effective while knowing that we do not have ultimate control over how other people receive us or perceive us. Um, and making it all feel a little better and a little easier, because like we're tired. I don't know about you guys. Like, the world is a mess right now. And so, we talk about all of this stuff with the ultimate goal of helping people feel better and helping people feel like they can get through their days with a little bit more ease and a little bit more power and a little bit more of what they want their life to look like and what they want their organization to look like. Because again, we've got this opportunity right now while everything is in flux. It's easier to change things while things are in flux than it is when everything is just kind of like running along smoothly and we can all forget that bad stuff is happening. Like, we know bad stuff is happening right now. We know it. This is the time to step with bravery into creating new structures, creating better structures within these broken systems that we find ourselves in. And it's both an individual effort and it's a team effort. So I want to wrap us or start wrapping us up by saying a huge thank you to the organizations who brought us in this spring. We had a blast. Like, it was just truly a joy and a privilege to work with these teams across the country and get to travel and get to, spend time together. Because of course we haven't gotten a chance to do a lot of that since pre-pandemic, and to see the potential out there for better is really thrilling. It's really thrilling. And we could not be more grateful for the opportunity to help along the way.
100%. We are always so grateful that we get to do what we do, because I can't think of a better way to be dealing with the dumpster fire of the world right now than to be in the solution, not the problem.
Yeah.
And that's what we hope to be able to spread forth. Practical things, make things better.
Absolutely. So I see we've got a couple people watching us. If you want to throw any comments or questions on, now is definitely the time to do it. But just in case nothing comes in, which is totally fine, we want to tell you a little bit about the kind of work that we do and how to find us if you want to work with us. If this has sparked your curiosity about either our corporate training or our individual coaching, we want to tell you a little bit about it. So corporate wise, we've done a lot of really cool designing specific things for the specific needs that we see. We love building custom workshops, but you can always find ready to go workshops on public speaking, obviously on team communication, on handling difficult conversations, on something that we like to call communication core values and superpowers and evil twins, getting really clear on who you are and what you bring to the table and how that coalesces as a team. And then just the sort of general, how do we understand how our voice works and how communication works? How do we set that container? How do we begin to engage with this material in an interesting way? We do this stuff in half day and full day and multi-day formats. And we are here for traveling because we super duper like traveling. We also can do it virtually as well, of course, because we're all hybrid now. Yeah. So what about private coaching, Julie?
We also work with clients on a one-on-one basis on 2 different tracks. So if you've got a speech that you want to create, like a signature talk, we've got something for you. If you have something that's already written that you want to workshop, we've got something for you. If you want to work on your presence, we've got a 3-month program that we do that with. So figure out what your goals are, what your thoughts are. Reach out, book a 15-minute consultation. Either Casey or I will actually get on the phone with you to talk about your goals and get to know you a little better. So you can also realize that this stuff, it's all learnable.
Mm-hmm.
All learnable. And we love working with private clients and love helping you on all levels, whether it's how do I speak up more in meetings to I need to give this presentation next week, can you help? The gamut. So just reach out, come talk to us. We'll love to talk to you anyway.
Awesome.
You can put that on the website, which in my view is on the banner right below my face.
Yes, vitalvoicetraining.com. So this also concludes our 3rd season of Voice Is, which is, holy crap, 3 seasons. That's really cool. We've been so grateful to talk to so many amazing folks over the 3 seasons, and we hope that you'll check out our back catalog as we prepare for what's next for Voices, figure out what season 4 is going to look like, who else we want to talk to. But we really, I hope if you take away anything from today about us, it's that we super duper love this and we're complete nerds, and we will happily talk about all of this stuff with anybody who ever wants us to talk about it, because it's really fun and interesting. And so are the people that we work with.
Yep. And for season 3, this was the first year we had a sponsor.
Yes.
So we were approached by a clothing company called Armoire, which will, if you're listening to this as a podcast, will be in the show notes and linked and all of that. That is where this little number. Yes. Yeah. And getting back out into the real world with dipping into clothes that weren't yoga pants. I'm just so grateful that we had this particular convergence. So we recommend check out Armoire. They change their stuff seasonally. They've got a huge selection of sizes. It's so far, everything has been so easy from ordering it to having it show up at your door to you don't even worrying about dry cleaning, send it back. So that's my genuine pitch for how much we have loved getting the opportunity to get to know that company, and also gratitude for their support of Voices.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for watching or listening in the future. We can't wait to talk to you more about all of this stuff. And we'll see you around. Bye.
Voice is produced and edited by us, Casey Erin Clark
and Julie Fogg. Our theme song from this point on is from Softkill.
If you'd like to learn more about Vital Voice Training and all the different ways that we work with both individuals and organizations, you can find everything you need to know on our website, vitalvoicetraining.com.
You can also follow us on Twitter at @vital_voice and on Instagram at Vital Voice Training. If you enjoyed what you heard today, we would love for you to rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And remember,
your voice, your body, and your ideas deserve to take up space in the world.